Welcome to the Central Prairie Co-op podcast, your go-to source for all things agriculture. Each week, we bring you expert insights, market trends, and real stories from the field. Whether you're a seasoned producer or joining us for the first time, there is something here for you. So, grab a coffee and let's dive into the business of agriculture from the ground up. Welcome to the Central Prairie Co-op podcast. Joining us today is our CEO, Mike Corbus. And Mike, you're going to provide us an update of how we ended the year financially and what the future for Central Prairie Co-op looks like.
Yeah, thank you, Mandy. I would like to do that. I've got plenty to dig into here, so let me start right from the top. So we closed our fiscal year 26, officially February 28th, and then we go through the independent audit process and all that till we finally get our final audited numbers, and it was good. I'll just throw some percentages and numbers out there for everybody to digest. Our net income improved by 173% versus last year, so a very nice turnaround. We ended up with a total net gain of a little more than $2.1 million and local net of $1.25. So local, for those who may not be familiar with that, the local aspect is without any patronage. We do business with some other larger co-ops out there, and sometimes there's patronage that comes in, but it's not guaranteed like any, But really what that tells us is the local is what we pay attention to the most, because that is what you would make as a business without any other outside assistance, basically. And so what this whole thing represents is a $5 million turnaround from fiscal year 2025. And as everybody remembers quite well, we had 3 years of drought, and then the big whammy at the end of that was the Milo market disappeared on a year when we took in a lot of Milo. Mm-hmm. And so co-ops really from the central part of the state to the west in particular were hit fairly hard with that. And so we had a big hole to dig out of, and I'm very, very happy to report that we've done that.
Incredible what a little rain can do.
Yeah, but there was a whole lot that went into it, and I will tell you, the good Lord did bless us with rain, but this prompts a little bit of a conversation about volume. Volume is good. It can also be detrimental, and sometimes, for example, with the Milo market falling out, it turned out to be very detrimental for the co-op. We always want our producers to have great yields and be able to produce more and more grain, but sometimes that poses a lot of other issues on the co-op end
Right.
for the elevator side of things. So there's a lot going into it, and I will dive into that a little bit more in a minute, but none of this happened by chance. There was a lot of change involved, and some of it was pretty difficult, to be honest with you. But it requires a commitment to doing things differently. And I'm very, like I said, proud of what we accomplished as a co-op. But I also want to make it very clear that we understand that there's more to go. There's going to be discipline required, a lot of adaptation. What we really want to do is make this a habit, obviously. So let me start with some things that contributed to making this happen, then I'll get more into some of the things that we are facing and need to do for the future. First of all, we have to thank the membership profusely, because the co-op simply doesn't even exist without the membership.
Absolutely.
And we can't really even fully express how grateful we are that folks stick with us and bring us their grain, and they do agronomy business, fuel, and feed with us. I know that the staff is very dedicated to our cause, and it really means a lot that the membership continues to do business with us. I also want to recognize the entire staff at Central Prairie Co-op, because I do get to see the hard work that they put in and the fact that it means something to them. So, when I talk about the challenges and the difficult decisions and all that, well, it affects all of us, and, it's nice to watch everybody put their nose to the ground and get after things and make the change happen. I also really need to thank the board of directors. I have to share this. They've exhibited great leadership and insight, and they have been willing to make some very tough decisions, and they've done that with great integrity. I get to sit in the board meeting and listen to the discussions and the considerations made, and I'm very proud. And frankly, I'm fortunate to be supported by a group like that and know that they are making the decisions that everyone believes are the right decisions to be made to move this co-op forward. So, if you're farming today, we want to be around and provide value for your children.
Yes.
And beyond.
Yes.
So back to a few numbers here. The feed department achieved a 235% improvement over the last fiscal year.
Wow.
Yes. Wow is a great word. That team has done a great job. They've been really focused on efficiency, looked at ways to bolster the input sourcing, and just continuing to deliver high-quality products and service. And like a lot of our assets, and we'll talk about this a lot, they're old, like other co-ops like ours, and that presents many challenges. There are many breakdowns, disruptions, and it's easy to give up, but they don't. And they keep those strong relationships, so I'm very proud of them. The petroleum department, so they actually backtracked 23% from last year, but they didn't, and let me explain that. They actually doubled their local income. So what that tells me is that, again, if you remember, local is without any patronage. They're doing a really good job of running their business unit.
Yes.
That team is fantastic. The reason they backtracked is because it's basically CHS products that we supply and work with, and due to some changes they made, essentially almost all of that patronage disappeared. So there was 89.5% less patronage. So again, if we'd have had what normally comes in, they would have also had a very high positive percentage, but in the end, they really did well.
They did. Incredible job.
They did. A very capable team, small team, and it's amazing what they do with their size. I also want to recognize the administrative office. So we don't really, there is a financial sheet tied to them, but it's not a income generating group on paper. But that team is extremely essential to our success. So we have in the office accounts payable and receivable, human resources, information technology, which is part of your role, Chief Information Officer.
Yes.
Finance, safety, and compliance. All of those things go together as a support group for everybody out in the field, so to speak. Agronomy recorded 137% improvement over last year, and that's a pretty complex business unit. There is a lot that goes into that. Like all the other units, a lot of hard work and long hours, but they've worked hard on other things like our CRI initiative as well, which, to remind everybody, is all about us trying to find better ways to provide you better input products and hopefully buy better as well, so that we can pass that along to you. Because we know that's one of the major challenges that our producers face is input costs remain high and grain prices do not always.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking of grain achieved 112% improvement over last year. So when I say complex, I'll have to apply that to grain too. It sounds really simple. It's just elevators and grain comes in and it goes out, but it is far from that. So we have been focusing on reducing some of the overhead, and we've got a long way to go on that. Again, I'll get into that in a minute. One of the things that really hit us hard over the years is we take grain, let's say wheat, the first harvest of the year. An elevator fills up, so we don't want to shut the elevator down, so we then transfer those bushels out to another elevator, so that elevator remains open. But now you fill up the other elevator, and then you transfer bushels again. Every single time we move that grain, it costs a lot of money. And in today's world, the actual net margin on a bushel of grain for a grain elevator is nothing. It really isn't. You don't have room for error. So we cannot afford to continue doing that. And when I get into our strategy for the future, I'll discuss that a little bit more, but we are doing everything to minimize that. I don't know that you can ever completely stop that, but we can get close. And also it puts you in a position where you're trying to sell grain at a time when nobody really wants to buy your grain. Mm-hmm. And that always results in less margin.
Yep. Or
just flat out loss. So these are things that we can't continue to do. The Frederick ground bunker, that served two purposes. One is we really want to work on providing modernization and speed. A ground bunker may not be very glamorous, but it does provide speed for the producer. The other key thing that it does for the cooperative, and thus the membership, is that it allows us to keep the grain where it was delivered until it's time to go to the end user. So the rule that we're trying to effect here with grain is move it once.
Yes.
Not 2, 3, 4, 5 times, because you only lose money when you do that. Grain was also very good at managing the logistics to keep cash flow working properly. We've also expanded and continue to do so with the network of trading partners in end markets. And then lastly, I touched on this a while ago, but back to the milo crop that we had and the disappearance of that market, we were able to get that sold forward, and it took us the better part of a year to finally get rid of that crop. But at least we got it sold, because I know not everybody had that luxury. So pretty fortunate overall.
Yeah, we are blessed.
Mm-hmm. But beyond departmental performance, some of the other things that helped, again, we had rain, thank goodness. We were blessed there. But we also did some things like speed upgrades at Nickerson, and of course Frederick provided that as well. We took some first steps to developing a premium wheat market, trying to get that brought into the area to help our farmers. And then, again, I've talked about this, but I want to point this out. We are the only cooperative in the entire nation that offers its members the National Sorghum Producers Program. And not that long ago, checks were issued totaling nearly $1 million. Well, that doesn't just go to the membership. It effectively puts that out in the local economy. So,
and that was $1 million just to our producers?
Yes, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So things like that we're going to continue to pursue for opportunities, anything we can find. And again, I feel very fortunate that we've got the staff to look for these things and have connections,
Yes.
And try to bring some more value. So let me transition a little bit here to the next question some folks will have is, we had a good year, and I am very excited about that. But while we made money, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
The turnaround to me was the bigger story. We dug ourselves out of a
huge.
pretty hole.
It was
pretty
huge.
big hole.
Yeah.
But you can lose that much in a short period of time. So we're not out here pounding our chest, celebrating in that regard. We're saying, look, it's great. We want to continue to do that, but we know we have a long way to go yet.
Yeah.
And I want to be very transparent with the membership about everything. And so I'll have some candid conversations, and I'm going to talk now about patronage. So the decision was made this year to not issue patronage checks. Clearly that will be disappointing to some folks, and we know that, and we regret that genuinely. But here's really what matters in my book, is that our long-term goal is we want to provide modernized assets that work for today's farmer, and we'd like to issue every year patronage checks. But it's kind of like the chicken or the egg, which comes first. If we issue patronage checks and drain what we have, we cannot build out and do the things we need to do to position this co-op to where we can be profitable on a routine basis.
Yes.
This is we're entering what I'll call a transition period in the co-op, and this is going to be probably the toughest period, frankly. What we need to do now is transition from spending all of our money on repairing older equipment that doesn't actually get us forward, and start directing that capital more towards modernization.
Yes.
Giving today's farmers what they need, the value they need. So I've heard it said before, some people think, well, a co-op shouldn't make money. I completely reject that, because if you don't make money, there's no possible way for you to modernize anything.
Yeah, and position the co-op for the future.
Correct. Can't ever pay patronage checks if you don't make money. And part of the value, I believe, as a member is, it goes beyond that patronage to the fact that we are working together to build out this infrastructure, and not just keep pace, but I'd like to get ahead of it one day too, and bring some new modernization things maybe we don't
Yes.
even know we need yet.
Yeah.
So that's a big challenge, and that is in our sights. but we understand that there may be some difficult trade-offs as we go through this. So in a perfect world, I'd like to say, wave the magic wand and go, there's a $10 million asset, whatever it might be, and, this replaces this old asset over here. Mm-hmm. I can't guarantee that it goes in that order, but I can tell you this. I want to just go through a list here, and it's a long list, but I'll just give you the highlights. We have concentrated this winter as much as we can on focusing on every single location, finding every little repair that needs to be made, and really attacking that. I have to say, we have always done that. I know sometimes folks question that because we get into harvest and then you have breakdown and then you have a breakdown over here. Well, even with everything we've done, I would be shocked to have to go through a harvest without something breaking down. That is exactly when those things happen.
Yeah, machinery doesn't break down when you're not using it.
Right. And it's older. And a lot of the things that we have break today, they don't even make parts for. Mm-hmm. So now we rely on fabricating our own parts or finding some workaround. So with that said, let me go through a little bit of a list here. Some of these we've completed, many of these we have yet to do yet. Bushton, the fertilizer shed, needs some repair and upgrade. That will be pretty costly. We always have, whether it's a propane or fuel truck or a feed truck or a fertilizer spreader or spray rig, whatever it is, those are all, as all the listeners know, very high dollar machines.
Yes.
$500,000, $750,000 machines. Almost every year we have to replace one of those. Just the way it goes. And so there's a hit. So we have one of those coming. Roof repairs. These old elevators, you can repair a roof. Very expensive, by the way. 2 years later, you're repairing it again because they just don't hold. So we have to start looking at those. And, what we do today is we do the best we can trying to make it the most cost-effective repair. If you don't do it, grain spoils or you can't use those bins. But if that's all you do, if all your money is consumed just keeping things running, then we will never be positioned to be successful down the road.
Yes.
So that's that trade-off. Sterling Hub fertilizer shed. It's not that old, but it's high use. So you already have some repairs needed there. Partridge fertilizer shed. That thing, that's one of the older ones. We've been able to do what's needed to keep it running, but it's clearly not a state-of-the-art shed, but it works. We had to purchase a skid steer chase. There's elevator repairs there, the hoop shed. The hoop shed isn't all that old. I don't know, 8, 9 years old, I'm guessing. But when you have an asset like that runs hard all the time, again, you're going to run into repairs. And those are not going to be cheap repairs. We have a lot of miscellaneous repairs in the grain department. Things like fuel tanks. We have to keep the paint in a certain condition on those fuel tanks to be in compliance. You have a thing, speaking of compliance, you have PCI compliance.
Correct.
So what that has to do with credit card compliance. So when you have fuel pumps out there, those seem to come around every couple of years. They're very expensive. And sometimes, and we have done this, you look at these, well, you don't even make enough money to cover that. And then 2 to 3 years, you're going to do it again. So that's why some of the fuel locations no credit cards, you just can't pencil it. Mm-hmm. Little River, main leg drum needs some work. So, there you start looking at things where the parts can be 3 months out. So, you say, well, let's limp through, but really, it's coming, so you got to get the parts anyway. Because when it breaks, you can't be down for 3 months. So those are expenditures. At Nickerson, the small leg drum, so that's not part of the big upgrade we did, but now you've got an issue there, and that's, again, just wear tear, some dust mitigation and things like that. So when you look at this list and you realize, okay, we made some money, but there you go.
Right.
Right? It's and it never ends. So back to what I said earlier is that the big mission for us is if that's all you're ever going to achieve, you're just going to go backwards. And we are committed to going forward. So
we are. And we have a team that wants to be better and better and better.
we do. We do. And again, that goes back to what I talked about at the beginning is there were a lot of things that went into the success we had this year. But, we are facing every year's tough. I mean,
Yes.
we're talking, our producers are listening. They know that word. They understand that word very well. And it's the same for the co-op.
It is.
So when we take all this into account, what do we need to do? Again, we've got to transition spending so that we can direct more of it towards modern, faster assets. So, for example, we need faster and better grain storage. We need to stop moving the grain around. So we've made some progress there. We've got more to go. Automation is a big thing.
Huge.
And again, we look at that. If we're going to improve a facility, can we utilize some automation? And some of it, in a relative term, would be affordable. I mean, you can go crazy, but they now have fully automatic grain probes, fully automatic kickers, and grain grading and that sort of thing. I'm betting that a lot of the folks listening to this podcast have personally experienced that it's a difficult world today, when it comes to finding people to fill jobs.
Yes.
And, we're all experiencing that across the entire nation.
We are. Every industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are things we have to look at. But a real key factor here, and I want to go back to grain for a minute, is that flexibility is really what it's all about. So the ground pile is a great example that gave us the ability to take a larger crop. So we had a place for the producers to bring the grain. It gave us the flexibility to sell that grain when we need to sell it.
Yes.
And when I say need to sell it, I don't mean like emergency. I mean like we need to sell it these months because that's when we can actually make money on it.
Right.
So when we start looking at that, we're looking at trends in agronomy, not just what we're doing today. What is the trend? What do our producers need? Speaking of that, we've heard from our producers, many of them, that this is what they want.
Yes, we have.
And so we are determined to make that happen. I just have to say again that, it's quite a challenge, and that's okay.
We're up for it.
Yeah, some of us like a challenge, and we get a challenge. And that's fine, But I would just ask, again, the membership, if you ever have any questions or thoughts, you're always welcome to reach out to me or others, and we're glad to talk about it. Again, I know that the transitional period here sometimes will be difficult, and
it will.
I wish that weren't the case, but that's the way it is.
It is. They don't call it the bleeding edge for nothing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It comes with a little pain.
Yeah. So I'll cap it up, and say this again. We had a great year. I'm very thankful for our membership, and our employees did a fantastic job. We all came together and made this thing work. We're celebrating for a short bit, but that's all we're celebrating because we're back to work. We have things to do.
We got lots of things to do.
Yes, we do. So anyway, that's all I have. Appreciate the opportunity to share this information with the membership.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And thank you all for joining the Central Prairie Co-op podcast. Be sure to tune in next week, and we will continue our discussions of all things agriculture from the ground up.